this is John though with the DNB Academy, and in this video I'm gonna show you how to make modern claps with Serum. Alright, moving on to our project, I'm gonna show you the drum loop that I made. Really simple stuff. It consists of one break from the DNB Academy Creative Suite Volume 1 and the kick from the Bristol Tech Pack. Just really simple stuff with a saturator on the drum bus, just to have some context on what we're gonna do. As I told you, really simple stuff. And then what we're gonna do is our clap. Alright, the theory behind this clap is simple. If you look at a snare, we usually have our main transient that hits like with nothing on top of it besides the noise and the acoustic elements of a snare, but usually they are a bit offset to it, but with a slight fading into those other samples. But with claps, you have to look at it differently. So we have to assume that we want to have that finger snap effect, like you hear like multiple hits that are not really playing on top of each other, but with a slight difference in between them. So for that occasion, what we're gonna do is create different transients, place them in different spots and giving them different processing to make it sound like it's all sound being played like a usual finger snap that you'll hear. Alright, let's move on to it. First things first, we already loaded in our instance of Serum, and what we're gonna do is just write a simple MIDI clip, play a note, and then we'll place them on the usual drum and bass pattern. So this is all we're left with. Alright, let's just solo our clap, and let's start our first patch. So the theory here, it's pretty much like doing the same transit you will do for a snare, but this time shorter. So okay, we've got our basic shapes: sine wave, random phase all the way down, phase 90 degrees. Now we move on to our envelopes, our LFOs I mean, but on envelope mode. And let's draw our first one for the volume. Let's assign this to the volume, and we're left with something like this, which is more familiar for most of you for sure. And now moving on to our second envelope, we're gonna do a slightly different shape, and we're gonna assign this to the coarse pitch, and then we're gonna press Alt Shift and mouse button so we can make this polar. All right, awesome. Now we're getting the feeling of a actual snare transient. But now let's make it a bit shorter. When I say a bit, I say a lot. Now let's tweak some of our semitones here so we can have something a bit higher pitched. Okay, so this is enough for our first transient. And now what we're gonna do is just group this track. You can do this on Ableton by pressing Ctrl G. And you can I'm mostly sure that you can do the same in any other DAW. So now we're going to call this one Transient. And now we're going to create another chain, load in another instance of Serum, and we're going to repeat the process here. We could actually have copied that one, but this way it's better, just because you don't have to do so much redo and undo. So, okay, same thing goes here. Something like this. Envelope mode. The same here. You can pretty much follow the same process as we did before. But this is what we would have done if we wanted to copy what we did before. But as I mentioned before, what we need now is something that is playing a bit offset of our original drum hit. So let's increase the grid, and instead of having the volume automation starting up in here, we're just gonna delete, choose ramp down option here, and let's start our first transient of the second layer here. And let's do a pretty similar shape, but we can't forget that we also need to do this to our pitch. So we're gonna ramp down. We're gonna put it here as well. You're starting to hear both these transients playing apart from each other. So let me show you the span here. A single span, so you can actually see what's happening. So you have multiple harmonics playing on top of each other, but with a slight difference. So we're already getting that clappy effect. So let's just pitch this up even more, our second layer. And now let's start the processing. All right, let's call this second transient. It's fine. All right, now let's use our first plugin for this one, which is an EQ. Really simple. I'm just going to use a EQ8 from Ableton. And I'm going to cut some of the lower frequencies of this layer. All right. Now we're going to use RC20 from Excellent Audio, so we can add a bit of noise and texture to this layer. I'm gonna apply some noise. I'm gonna choose like white noise. Now let's turn on the follow function here. The EQ, so we can cut some of these lower frequencies that the noise is adding to the sound. Just make the follow more intense. And now, the best part of it, it's the filter, it's the delay. We're gonna use a delay so we can actually add even more offsetting to these transients. And that way, we're gonna create even more texture, and we're gonna add way more personality to the sound. And that way, you can create your own claps with so many different nuances and really unique stuff with these sort of processing. So let's go with a delay here, which is the classic delay from Ableton Live. You can do this with any other delay that allows you to do what this one does, which is like really simple delay. So let's put the dry and the dry and wet button all the way up to 100%. You see that, so we want the smaller feedback. Now let's use the time here, so that way we can be more precise. See, this is phasing. We need to give them a bit more. We could use like ping pong mode as well, like this. Now it's all about finding the right spot. You can, I think something like this. You can now even put RC20 after the delay, so the noise also affects all these tiny delay hits that we're getting now. Okay, now that we got a delay done, it's time to just go back to our main transient and make it a bit higher and shorter here. Right, awesome. Now let's just give this a bit more processing here, and I'm gonna use a plugin that usually it's pretty much used for this purpose. That's why it's called texture. it's to add texture. It's a really simple plugin. It just adds effects on top of your sound. Usually, this works as a layer. So we're pretty much adding a layer on top of this layer, which can be so beneficial for this type of sound. So as you can see here, this is our triggers. This is the sounds that we can use as a sample for our layer. So we're gonna choose this SFX Foley section here. And let's go with something that resembles some crackling stuff. Like, let's start off with plastic bags. Bag 2, I mean. We want this to have a slight decay. So we can have even more artifacts. Let's just tweak the mix so we're happy with. Now the density. A bit of pitch. Just fool around until you see, like, we're getting there. All right. Okay, to close off this chain, what we would need would be a bit of compression or simple soft clipping, so we can merge both sounds together. And for that occasion, I'm going to use a simple but yet effective wave shaper from Melda Productions, and I'm going to put this outside of our chain, which I'm going to minimize here so we have things organized. Something that you should always take care of with your projects, organization, especially these complex chains. So let's put the dry and wet all the way up. And now let's start to distort a bit. Okay, now that we got this, at this point, we should go back to our main patches and start tweaking them. See, I feel like it's more beneficial like this, a bit lower up on the mix. Alright, just a matter of finding the right spot for everything. This is the process that you'll end up on doing a lot, because this is how it is. And then you can obviously go back to your delay and always fool around with the frequency of the filter and even the feedback, because you can have this like shorter. This way it resembles a clap even more. And yeah, I think this is it. So let's just resample this so we can actually see the waveform and have our sounds in audio, which is always beneficial. And there you go. You have your audio version and your MIDI version. This is always good to do with your projects, especially with drums. Just leave your MIDI, because you might need to do some changes along the way. But audio, it's always more consistent. It's all about the consistency of using audio. So that's why I usually resample these sounds. And as you can see here, this is a pretty good visual representation of what we did. We've got our main transient that can obviously be shorter. I think this is a long transient, but it's really up to your taste. And then we got another one playing a bit more onto the right side, and this one on the left side. So this is really cool to actually see, because this is exactly what I told you that we would do. A couple of transients playing offset of each other. So now let's use the audio editor on Ableton to make this a little bit shorter. So let's go to the transient mode here, and let's make this a bit shorter. You can actually pitch it up or down. Something like this. Now let's hear this with our drum loop and see if it sounds good or not. Sounds pretty good to me. So yeah, This is it. This is how you do a modern clap in Serum. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.